The riding crop struck the wooden table with a sharp crack. Lady Victoria flinched, but kept her eyes down. Her stepmother circled her like a hawk, watching wounded prey. "You are 24 years old," Lady Thornbury hissed. "No man wants you. No man will ever want you." Victoria's hands trembled in her lap. She twisted her fingers together and bit her lip. The morning sun streamed through the window of the drawing room. It made the dust particles dance in the air. She wished she could disappear like those tiny specks of dust. "Look at me when I speak to you," her stepmother demanded. Victoria lifted her eyes. Lady Thornbury's face was twisted with disgust. The older woman wore a burgundy dress that cost more than Victoria's entire wardrobe. Diamonds glittered at her throat. Her blonde hair was perfectly arranged. She looked like a queen. Victoria felt like a servant in her worn grey dress. "Your father wasted his money on you for years," Lady Thornbury continued. 3 seasons in London. 3. And not a single offer. Do you know what that makes you?" Victoria swallowed hard. She knew better than to answer. "It makes you worthless," her stepmother said. "A burden, an embarrassment to this family." The words cut like knives. Victoria had heard them before, many times, but they still hurt. Each time felt like the first time. "Louisa received 5 offers in her first season," Lady Thornbury said. Her voice softened when she spoke of her own daughter. 5 proposals from respectable men. She chose a viscount, while you sit here like a withered old maid. Victoria wanted to point out that Louisa was beautiful. Golden hair and blue eyes, and a sweet smile that men loved. Louisa had their stepmother's protection and guidance. Louisa had beautiful gowns and jewelry. Victoria had none of those things, but she said nothing. Speaking only made it worse. "The Duke of Ashworth is hosting a house party," Lady Thornbury said. She tapped the riding crop against her palm. "We have been invited, all of us. Even you." Victoria's heart sank. House parties meant more humiliation, more watching from the corners while other girls danced and laughed, more listening to whispered comments about the plain Thornbury girl. "You will come with us," her stepmother said. "You will be useful for once. Louisa will need someone to help her dress, to carry her things, to make her look even more beautiful by comparison." The words should have hurt. They did hurt. But Victoria was used to pain. She nodded once. "Yes, my lady," she whispered. "Speak up," Lady Thornbury snapped. "No wonder no man wants you. You whisper like a mouse." "Yes, my lady," Victoria repeated. Her voice was louder this time, but it shook. Lady Thornbury smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Good. Now go. Help your sister pack. We leave tomorrow at dawn." Victoria stood and curtsied. Her knees felt weak. She walked to the door with her head down. Behind her she heard her stepmother laugh. It was a cold sound, a cruel sound. In the hallway, Victoria pressed her back against the wall. She closed her eyes and took deep breaths. The tears wanted to come. They always wanted to come. But she had learned not to cry where others could see. Tears only brought more mockery. A hand touched her arm. Victoria jumped and opened her eyes. Mrs. Davies, the housekeeper, stood beside her. The older woman's face was full of kindness. "Don't let her break you, dear," Mrs. Davies whispered. "You're worth more than she'll ever know." Victoria tried to smile. It felt wrong on her face, like her features had forgotten how to make that shape. "Thank you," she managed to say. Mrs. Davies squeezed her arm and walked away. The small kindness made Victoria's throat tight. She blinked hard and hurried toward Louisa's room. There was work to do, There was always work to do. Louisa sat at her dressing table when Victoria entered. Her stepsister was brushing her golden hair. It caught the light and shimmered. Everything about Louisa shimmered. She was like a jewel, bright and precious and perfect. "Oh, good, you're here," Louisa said. She smiled at Victoria in the mirror. "I need help deciding what to pack. The Duke is very eligible, you know, very handsome, and so rich." Victoria moved to the wardrobe and opened it. Silk and satin and lace filled every inch. More dresses than one person could ever need. "Mama says he's looking for a wife," Louisa continued. "Can you imagine? A duchess. I would have a coronet and everything." "That would be lovely," Victoria said softly. "Yes, it would," Louisa agreed. She set down her brush and turned to face Victoria. "You don't mind, do you, coming with us? I know you don't enjoy parties much." Victoria pulled out a blue silk gown. She held it up for Louisa's inspection. Her stepsister wrinkled her nose. "Not that one," Louisa said. "It makes my skin look sallow. The pink one. The one with the lace." Victoria put the blue dress back and found the pink one. It was beautiful. Layers of pale pink silk with white lace at the sleeves and hem. Tiny pearls decorated the bodice. "It must have cost a fortune." "Much better," Louisa said, "and I'll need the matching slippers and the pearl earrings and my new shawl." Victoria gathered the items. She laid them carefully in the trunk. Louisa continued to chatter about the house party, about the Duke, about all the eligible men who would be there. Victoria listened and nodded and said nothing. It was easier that way. The Duke of Ashworth stood at the window of his study. He watched the rain fall on his gardens. The roses were in bloom. Their petals were heavy with water. They bent under the weight, but did not break. He envied them. He felt like breaking all the time. "Your Grace?" He turned. His butler, Graves, stood in the doorway. The old man's face was carefully neutral, but his eyes held concern. Graves had served the family for 40 years. He had watched Alexander grow from a boy to a man, from a carefree youth to a grieving widower. "The guests will arrive tomorrow," Graves said. "Everything is prepared." Alexander nodded. He did not want guests. He did not want a house party, but his mother had insisted. His sister had insisted. His closest friends had insisted. Everyone insisted that he needed to move on, to live again, to marry again. He was 28 years old, a duke, master of vast estates and enormous wealth. He should be happy. He should be enjoying life. Instead, he felt empty. A hollow shell of a man going through the motions of existence. "Thank you, Graves," he said. "That will be all." The butler hesitated. "Might I say something, Your Grace?" Alexander gestured for him to continue. "Lady Catherine would not want you to mourn forever," Graves said quietly. "She loved life. She loved you. She would want you to be happy." The words were kindly meant, but they landed like stones in Alexander's chest. Catherine, his wife of only 6 months. Sweet, laughing Catherine, who had died in childbirth 3 years ago. The baby had died too. A son, his heir, his future. All of it gone in one terrible night. "I am doing my duty," Alexander said. His voice was flat. "I am hosting this party. I am meeting eligible young ladies. I am fulfilling my obligation to the title." "Duty is not enough," Graves said. "A man needs more than duty." Alexander turned back to the window. He heard Graves leave and close the door softly. The room felt larger when he was alone. Everything felt larger, emptier. He thought about Catherine. her dark curls and bright eyes, her laugh that sounded like music. She had made him feel alive. She had made this huge house feel like a home. Without her, it was just a collection of rooms and furniture and memories that hurt. His mother wanted him to marry for love again. His sister wanted him to find happiness. His friends wanted him to stop hiding in his grief. But Alexander did not know how to do any of those things. He had loved once. He had been happy once. It had been ripped away. He was afraid to try again. The rain continued to fall. The roses continued to bend. Alexander stood and watched and felt nothing. Tomorrow women would arrive, pretty girls in beautiful dresses. They would smile and flirt and try to catch his attention. They would see his title and his wealth. They would not see the broken man beneath. He wondered if anyone would ever see him again. The real him. Not the Duke, not the title. Just Alexander, lost and lonely and pretending to be whole. The carriages began arriving in the afternoon. Alexander stood in the entrance hall with his mother and sister. The Duchess Dowager looked elegant in purple silk. His sister, Anne, bounced on her toes with excitement. She loved social gatherings. She loved people and noise and life. "Try to smile, Alexander," his mother whispered. "You look like you're attending a funeral." "I will try, Mother," he said. "That's all I ask," she replied. She patted his arm. The first guests were Lord and Lady Pemberton with their daughter. Then came the Viscount Blackwood. Then the Earl of Somerset with his 2 sons. Alexander greeted them all. He said the right things. He played the perfect host. Inside he felt nothing. Then the Thornbury carriage arrived. Lord Thornbury had died 2 years ago. His widow, Lady Thornbury, stepped out first. She was a handsome woman with cold eyes. Behind her came a beautiful blonde girl in pink. This must be the daughter everyone talked about. Miss Louisa Thornbury, the beauty of the season. Alexander bowed. Miss Thornbury curtsied. She smiled at him with practiced charm. Her eyes assessed him like he was a prize horse at auction. He disliked her immediately. "Your Grace," Lady Thornbury said. "How kind of you to invite us. May I present my daughter, Miss Louisa Thornbury?" "I am honored," Miss Thornbury said. Her voice was high and sweet. "The honor is mine," Alexander replied automatically. He waited for them to move inside. But Lady Thornbury turned back to the carriage. "Victoria, don't dawdle." Another figure emerged from the carriage. A woman in a plain grey travelling dress. Her hair was a soft brown colour pulled back in a simple style. She kept her head down as she helped the footman with the luggage. At first, Alexander thought she was a lady's maid. "That is my late husband's daughter from his first marriage," Lady Thornbury said. Her tone made it clear this daughter did not matter. "Miss Victoria Thornbury. She assists her sister." Victoria looked up briefly. Alexander saw her face clearly for a moment. She was not beautiful like Miss Louisa, but there was something in her face that caught his attention. Large brown eyes full of sadness, a gentle mouth, soft features. She looked tired. She looked hurt. She looked like someone who had forgotten how to hope. Their eyes met for just a second. Victoria's widened slightly. Then she quickly looked away and curtsied low, too low for a gentleman's daughter, like a servant. "Come along, Victoria," Lady Thornbury said sharply. "You're holding everyone up." Victoria gathered several bags and followed her family inside. She walked with her shoulders hunched, like she was trying to make herself smaller, invisible. Alexander watched her go. Something stirred in his chest. Not attraction exactly. Something else. Recognition, maybe. He saw in her the same thing he felt in himself. A person going through the motions. A person who had learned to expect pain instead of joy. Such a pity about that girl, his mother said quietly beside him. Lord Thornbury's first daughter. I heard Lady Thornbury treats her quite poorly. Why? Alexander asked. His mother shrugged. Jealousy, perhaps? Victoria was Lord Thornbury's favourite. His first wife died when Victoria was young. He doted on the girl. Then he remarried. Had Louisa. Everything changed. That is unfortunate, Alexander said. Yes, his mother agreed. Very unfortunate indeed. More guests arrived. Alexander continued his duties. But part of his mind stayed on the girl in grey. The one with sad eyes. The one who had looked at him and then looked away, like she knew she was not worth anyone's gaze. He understood that feeling. He understood it very well. The first dinner was a grand affair. The dining room blazed with candlelight. Crystal and silver gleamed on the long table. Ladies wore their finest gowns. Gentlemen wore their best evening clothes. Everyone laughed and talked and flirted. It was exactly the kind of event Alexander hated. He sat at the head of the table. Miss Louisa Thornbury sat to his right. His mother had arranged it. Miss Louisa talked constantly about London, about fashion, about mutual acquaintances. Her voice grated on his nerves, but he nodded politely and pretended to listen. Down the table he could see Victoria. She sat near the end, far from the important guests. Her grey dress looked drab among all the colours. No one spoke to her. She ate quietly and kept her eyes on her plate. Occasionally, her stepmother would say something sharp. Victoria would nod and set down her fork, as if she had been told she was eating too much. It bothered Alexander. He did not know why it bothered him, but it did. Your Grace, Miss Louisa said. Did you hear my question? Alexander turned back to her. I apologize. My mind wandered. Would you repeat it? Miss Louisa smiled, but her eyes were annoyed. I asked if you enjoy riding. Mama says you have excellent stables. Yes, I do enjoy riding, Alexander said. You are welcome to use any of my horses during your stay. How generous, Miss Louisa said. She placed her hand on his arm. Her touch felt calculating, like every gesture was designed to catch his interest. The dinner dragged on, course after course, more talking, more laughter. Alexander played his part, but he felt like an actor in a play, saying lines that meant nothing. After dinner, the ladies retired to the drawing room. The gentlemen stayed for port and cigars. Alexander listened to talk of politics and horses and hunting. He contributed when necessary. But mostly he thought about going to bed, about being alone, about not having to pretend anymore. When he finally joined the ladies, his mother was at the piano. Several young women gathered around to sing. Miss Louisa stood in the center. She had a lovely voice, clear and strong. Everyone applauded when she finished. She curtsied prettily and smiled at Alexander. He clapped politely. His eyes drifted around the room. Victoria sat in a corner with some needlework. She was mending a glove, not her own, he guessed, probably her sister's. Her head was bent over her work. Her fingers moved quickly and skillfully. No one paid her any attention. Alexander found himself walking toward her. He did not plan it. His feet just carried him there. She did not notice him approach. She was focused on her stitches. He saw now that her hair was not just brown. It had strands of gold and red mixed in. In the candlelight it looked warm, soft. Miss Thornbury, he said. Victoria jumped. The glove fell from her hands. She stood quickly and curtsied. Her face flushed pink. Your Grace, she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I apologize. I should not be sitting. I can leave if my presence disturbs you. Why would your presence disturb me? Alexander asked. This is a drawing room. You are a guest. You have every right to sit. Victoria looked confused, like she had never heard such a thing before. Thank you, Your Grace. Please, sit, he said. I did not mean to startle you. She sat slowly, like she expected him to change his mind. Alexander picked up the glove she had dropped and handed it to her. Their fingers touched briefly. Hers were cold. You do very fine work, he said, gesturing to the glove.
Thank you, Victoria said. She clutched the glove tightly. My mother taught me before she died. She said a lady should know how to mend things properly.
Your mother sounds wise, Alexander said. Victoria's face softened. For a moment, the sadness lifted. She was very wise and very kind. You must miss her, he said. Every day, Victoria admitted. Then she looked alarmed, as if she had said too much. Forgive me, Your Grace. I should not burden you with such things. It is no burden, Alexander said. I understand loss. Something in his tone made Victoria look up at him. Really look at him. Not at his title or his position. At him. Her brown eyes searched his face. He saw understanding dawn there. She had heard about his wife, about his grief. I am very sorry for your loss, she said softly. Losing someone you love is the hardest thing in the world. The simple words hit Alexander like a blow. Most people said the right phrases. Proper condolences, empty sympathy. But Victoria spoke with real feeling, real understanding, because she knew she had lost people too. Thank you, he managed to say. They stood in silence for a moment. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It felt strangely peaceful, like two wounded people recognizing each other. Victoria. Lady Thornbury's sharp voice cut through the room. What are you doing bothering His Grace? Come here at once. Victoria flinched. The softness disappeared from her face. The walls went back up. She curtsied quickly. Excuse me, Your Grace, she said. She hurried across the room to her stepmother. Alexander watched Lady Thornbury speak harshly to Victoria. The younger woman kept her head down and nodded. His sister Anne appeared at his elbow. That woman is dreadful, Anne said quietly. Lady Thornbury treats that poor girl like a servant. Yes, Alexander agreed. She does. You were kind to speak to her, Anne said. I don't think anyone else has. Alexander frowned. The unfairness of it bothered him. Victoria had done nothing wrong. She was quiet and gentle and kind, yet she was treated as worthless while her silly, shallow sister was celebrated. The evening finally ended. Guests retired to their rooms. Alexander walked the halls of his house and felt the familiar emptiness settle over him. Another day survived. Another performance completed. But as he lay in bed that night, he did not think about Miss Louisa. He thought about brown eyes full of understanding, about cold fingers and quiet words, about a woman who looked as lost as he felt. The next morning brought activities. The gentlemen went shooting. The ladies walked in the gardens. Alexander performed his duties as host. But he found himself looking for Victoria. She was not among the ladies in the garden. She was not in the drawing room. She seemed to have disappeared. After luncheon, Alex excused himself. He walked through his house without purpose, just wandering, trying to escape the noise and chatter. He ended up in the library. It was his favorite room, floor-to-ceiling books, leather chairs, quiet. He stopped in the doorway. Someone was already there. Victoria sat curled in a chair by the window. She had a book in her lap. Sunlight streamed over her. For once she looked peaceful, almost happy. Alexander started to leave. He did not want to disturb her, but she looked up and saw him. Panic crossed her face. She jumped to her feet. The book tumbled to the floor. "Your Grace," she said. "I apologize. I should have asked permission. I will leave immediately." "Please don't," Alexander said. He walked into the room. "You are welcome to read anything you like." "Are you certain?" Victoria asked. She looked doubtful. "Lady Thornbury says I should not impose on your hospitality, that I am here to serve my sister, not enjoy myself." Anger flared in Alexander's chest, sharp and hot. He pushed it down. Getting angry would not help Victoria. It would only frighten her. "Lady Thornbury is not the mistress of this house," he said firmly. "My mother is, and my mother would insist that all our guests enjoy themselves. You are a guest, Miss Thornbury, not a servant." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She blinked rapidly. "You are very kind, Your Grace." "I am simply being fair," Alexander said. He picked up the book she had dropped. "What are you reading?" "Poetry," Victoria said shyly. "Lord Byron. I know some people find him scandalous, but I think his words are beautiful." Alexander looked at the page. "She walks in beauty like the night," he read aloud, "of cloudless climes and starry skies." "Yes," Victoria said. Her voice was soft but passionate. "He writes about finding beauty in unexpected places, in darkness as well as light. I find that comforting." Alexander handed the book back to her. Their fingers touched again. This time hers were warm, from holding the book, from being in the sun. "Perhaps there is beauty in darkness," he said quietly. "Perhaps we just need to know how to see it." Victoria looked at him with those large brown eyes. Something passed between them. Understanding again. Connection. They were both living in darkness, both trying to find some small bit of beauty to hold on to. "Would you like to sit?" Alexander found himself asking. "I come here often. It is quiet, peaceful. I would enjoy the company if you do not mind sharing the space." Victoria hesitated. "I would not want to intrude on your privacy." "You would not be intruding," Alexander said. "I am asking you to stay." A small smile touched Victoria's lips. It transformed her face, made her almost pretty. No, Alexander realized, not almost. She was pretty. The sadness and fear usually hid it. But when she smiled, she was lovely. "Then I would be honored to stay, Your Grace," she said. They sat in the library together. Victoria read her poetry. Alexander pretended to read, but mostly watched her. She got lost in the words. Her lips moved slightly as she read. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she sighed. She felt the poetry deeply. It was beautiful to watch. Time passed quietly. No talking, just comfortable silence. Alexander realized he felt more peaceful than he had in years. There was no pressure to perform, no need to pretend. He could just be. Victoria's presence was soothing. Like cool water on a burn. A clock chimed. Victoria looked up, startled. "Oh, I must go. My sister will need help dressing for dinner." She stood quickly, the book still in her hands. She looked down at it, and then at Alexander. "May I? Would it be terribly bold to ask if I might borrow this?" she asked. "I would take great care of it." "Of course," Alexander said. "Keep it as long as you like." "Thank you, Your Grace," Victoria said. She curtsied and hurried toward the door. Then she paused and turned back. "Thank you for letting me stay, for treating me like I matter." She left before he could respond. Alexander sat alone in the library. His heart felt strange in his chest. Lighter somehow, like a weight had shifted. Victoria mattered, he thought. She mattered very much, even if no one else seemed to see it. The days fell into a pattern. During the day, Alexander played host. He took the gentlemen shooting. He rode with the ladies. He made conversation at meals. Miss Louisa stayed close to him. Her mother encouraged it. It was clear they expected an offer of marriage. Alexander felt nothing for Miss Louisa. She was pretty but empty, like a beautiful shell with nothing inside. She talked endlessly about herself, about what she wanted, what she expected from a husband. It exhausted him, but in the afternoons he would slip away to the library. Victoria would be there, reading. They developed an unspoken agreement. They would share the space. Sometimes they talked. Quiet conversations about books, about life, about loss. Sometimes they simply sat in silence, both finding peace in each other's presence. Alexander learned things about Victoria. She was intelligent. She read Greek and Latin. Her father had educated her before his death. She loved nature and music. She had a gentle sense of humor that surprised him. When she forgot to be afraid, she was delightful. Victoria learned things about Alexander too. He told her about Catherine, about the pain of losing his wife and child, about the emptiness that had consumed him. Victoria listened without judgment, without empty platitudes. She simply understood. "Do you think grief ever ends?" Alexander asked one afternoon. They sat in their usual chairs. Rain fell outside. The library felt like a world separate from everything else. Victoria considered the question carefully. "I don't think it ends," she said slowly. "But I think it changes, becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you." "That is wise," Alexander said. "My mother used to say that love and grief are two sides of the same coin." Victoria continued. "We grieve because we loved. The depth of our grief shows the depth of our love. So in a way, grief is a gift. Proof that we had something worth losing." Alexander felt something crack open inside him. He had been holding his grief like a shield, using it to keep everyone away, to protect himself from ever hurting again. But Victoria was right. The grief existed because the love had existed, and the love had been worth it. All of it. "You have given me much to think about," he said quietly. Victoria smiled. "I am glad I could help, Your Grace." "Would you call me Alexander?" he asked suddenly. "At least when we are alone, I find I am tired of being Your Grace all the time." Victoria's eyes widened. That would be most improper. "Perhaps," Alexander agreed, "but I would like it nonetheless. If you are comfortable, then yes," Victoria said softly. "Alexander." His name on her lips sounded right, like it belonged there. "And I shall call you Victoria," he said. "No more Miss Thornbury in this room, just Victoria." "Just Victoria," she repeated. Her smile grew. "I think I like that." They sat together until the dinner bell rang. When they parted, Alexander felt reluctant to go. The evening stretched ahead. More pretense, more performance, more Miss Louisa talking about nothing. He wanted to stay in the library with Victoria, with honesty and understanding and peace. But duty called. It always did. Dinner that evening was torture. Miss Louisa chattered endlessly about the planned ball. The house party would end with a grand ball. Everyone expected Alexander to announce his engagement to Miss Louisa that night. His mother had hinted at it. Lady Thornbury had hinted even more strongly. Miss Louisa acted as if it were already decided. But Alexander had decided nothing. The thought of marrying Miss Louisa made him feel ill. She was everything he did not want. Shallow, self-centered, cold beneath her pretty exterior. His eyes drifted down the table. Victoria wore the same grey dress. She picked at her food. Lady Thornbury leaned over and whispered something harsh. Victoria set down her fork and folded her hands in her lap. Her face was carefully blank. Alexander's jaw tightened. He wanted to say something, to defend Victoria. But this was not his place. Not yet. After dinner, there was music again. Miss Louisa sang. Everyone applauded. Alexander felt suffocated. He excused himself and went to his study. He stood at the window and looked out at his gardens. A figure walked there in the moonlight. A woman in a grey dress. Victoria. She moved slowly along the garden paths. Her face was tilted up to the moon. She looked so alone, so sad. Alexander did not think. He simply moved. Out of his study, through the house, into the gardens. He followed her path, until he caught up to her by the rose bushes. "Victoria," he said. She turned quickly. Her hand flew to her chest. "Alexander, you startled me." "I apologize," he said. "I saw you from my window. I wanted to make sure you were all right." "I am fine," Victoria said. But her voice shook. "No, you are not," Alexander said gently. "What happened?" Victoria looked down, her hands twisted together. "It is nothing, just the usual. Lady Thornbury told me I embarrassed the family at dinner, that I ate too much, that I sat incorrectly, that my dress is a disgrace." Her voice broke. "Sometimes I wonder if she is right, if I am a disgrace." "She is not right," Alexander said fiercely. He stepped closer. "Victoria, look at me." She raised her eyes. Tears shimmered there in the moonlight. "You are not a disgrace," Alexander said. "You are kind and intelligent and thoughtful. You have more worth in your smallest finger than your stepmother has in her entire body." "You don't have to be kind," Victoria whispered. "I know what I am, plain, awkward, unwanted." "You are none of those things," Alexander said. He reached out and took her hand. It was cold again. He enclosed it in both of his, trying to warm it. "You are beautiful, Victoria. Perhaps not in the way society prizes, but in ways that matter so much more." "I don't understand," Victoria said. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Your beauty is in your kindness," Alexander said. "In your intelligence, in your gentle spirit and your understanding heart, in the way you love poetry and find meaning in words, in the way you listen without judgment. You are the most beautiful woman I have met in years, and I am sorry that no one has told you that before." Victoria stared at him. Her lips parted in shock. "You truly mean that?" "I do," Alexander said. Every word. Something changed between them in that moment. The air felt charged, electric. Alexander became aware that he was standing very close to her, that he was holding her hand, that her face was tilted up toward his, that her lips looked soft. He should step back, should release her hand, should maintain proper distance. But he did not want to. For the first time in 3 years, he wanted something, wanted someone, wanted Victoria. "Alexander." Victoria breathed. Her eyes were wide, full of wonder and confusion and hope. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away, to reject him. But she did not move, did not speak, just watched him with those luminous eyes. Their lips met softly, gently, like a question being asked. Victoria made a small sound in her throat. Her free hand came up to rest on his chest. She kissed him back with a sweetness that made his heart ache. When they parted, Alexander rested his forehead against hers. They were both breathing hard. "I should not have done that," he said. "I apologize." "Don't apologize," Victoria said. Her voice was stronger now. "Please don't apologize. That was the most wonderful thing that has ever happened to me." Alexander pulled back to look at her face. She was smiling, really smiling. Joy radiated from her. She looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful. "Victoria," he said, I have feelings for you. Strong feelings. I know I should not. I know you are a guest in my home. I know your stepmother has plans for your sister, but I cannot help what I feel." "I have feelings for you too," Victoria said. Her smile faltered. "But it is impossible. Lady Thornbury would never allow it. She expects you to marry Louisa, and I am nothing. No one. I have no dowry, no prospects. I would bring you nothing but embarrassment." "You would bring me joy," Alexander said. "You would bring me peace. You would bring me yourself. That is everything." "Oh, Alexander," Victoria said. Fresh tears fell, but these were different tears. Happy tears. He kissed her again, longer this time, deeper. She melted against him. Her arms went around his neck. Alexander held her close and felt truly alive for the first time in years. This was what he had been missing. Not just love, but this specific love. Victoria's love, her gentleness and understanding and sweet passion. When they finally parted, they were both dazed. Alexander stroked her cheek with his thumb. "I want to court you properly," he said. "I want to marry you, Victoria. If you will have me." "Are you certain?" Victoria asked. "Truly certain. You could have anyone. Someone beautiful and accomplished. Someone who would be a proper duchess." "I want you," Alexander said firmly. "Only you. You are the only one who sees me, the real me. Not the title, not the duke, just Alexander. And I see you, just Victoria, the woman I have come to love." Victoria's breath caught. "Love?" "Yes," Alexander said. "I love you, Victoria Thornbury. I think I have been falling in love with you since that first night, when you looked at me with understanding, when you spoke to me about loss and grief, when you showed me that I was not alone." "I love you too," Victoria said. The words tumbled out. "I have loved you for days now, but I was too afraid to hope, too afraid to believe that you could ever care for someone like me. Someone like you is exactly who I need," Alexander said. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. "Will you marry me, Victoria? Will you be my wife, my duchess, my partner in all things?" "Yes," Victoria said. She laughed through her tears. "Yes, yes." Alexander swept her into his arms and spun her around. She clung to him and laughed. The sound was like music, like sunlight, like everything good in the world. When he set her down, they were both grinning like fools. Alexander took her hand and brought it to his lips. "Tomorrow, I will speak to your stepmother," he said. "I will ask for your hand properly, and then I will announce our engagement at the ball." Victoria's smile faded. "Lady Thornbury will be furious. She expects you to choose Louisa." "Lady Thornbury does not get to choose my wife," Alexander said. "I do, and I choose you." "She may refuse to give permission," Victoria warned. "She can be very cruel." "Then I will wait until you are 25. Alexander said. "You will not need her permission then, but I think she will agree. She will not want the scandal of refusing a duke." Victoria nodded slowly. "You are probably right. I know I am right." Alexander said. He pulled her close again. Trust me, my love. Everything will be well. We will be together. I promise. Victoria rested her head on his chest. Alexander held her and looked up at the stars. For the first time in years, he felt hope. Real, genuine hope for the future. They stayed in the garden for a long time, talking quietly, stealing kisses, making plans. When Victoria finally went inside, Alexander watched her go. His heart felt full, complete, like a missing piece had finally slipped into place. He went to bed that night and dreamed of the future, of Victoria beside him, of children laughing in these gardens, of growing old together, of being happy. It was a beautiful dream, and for the first time he believed it could come true. But the next morning brought a rude awakening. Alexander went to find Lady Thornbury. He found her in the morning room with her daughter. When he entered, both women looked up eagerly. "Your Grace," Lady Thornbury said. She smiled widely. "What a pleasant surprise. Please sit. Join us for tea." "Thank you, but I will stand," Alexander said. "I have come to speak to you about a matter of some importance." "Oh." Lady Thornbury's smile grew. She nudged Louisa. "This sounds promising. I wish to ask for permission to marry your stepdaughter," Alexander said clearly. "Of course," Lady Thornbury said. She clasped her hands together. "Oh, Louisa, my dear, a duchess." "Not Miss Louisa," Alexander said. His voice was firm. "Miss Victoria. I wish to marry Victoria." Silence fell. Lady Thornbury's smile vanished. Her face turned red. Louisa gasped and covered her mouth. "Victoria?" Lady Thornbury repeated. "You wish to marry Victoria?" "Yes," Alexander said. "I love her, and she has agreed to be my wife." Lady Thornbury stood abruptly, her hands clenched into fists. "That is impossible. Absolutely impossible." "Why is it impossible?" Alexander asked. He kept his voice calm. "Victoria's a gentleman's daughter. She is of age. There is no impediment to our marriage. She is nothing." Lady Thornbury hissed. "A mousy, pathetic creature with no beauty or accomplishments. She would make a terrible duchess. The scandal alone would ruin you." "I disagree," Alexander said. His jaw tightened. "Victoria is everything I want in a wife." "You cannot be serious," Lady Thornbury said. "Surely this is some kind of jest. You are meant to marry Louisa. Everyone expects it. Louisa is beautiful and charming and perfect for you." "Miss Louisa is a lovely young woman," Alexander said. "But I do not love her. I love Victoria." Louisa burst into tears. She ran from the room sobbing. Lady Thornbury watched her go. Then she turned back to Alexander. Her eyes were cold as ice. "I will not give my permission," she said. "Victoria is my responsibility. I will not allow her to trap a duke with her manipulations." "Victoria has not trapped anyone," Alexander said. Anger heated his voice now. "I pursued her. I fell in love with her. This is my choice." "Your choice is foolish," Lady Thornbury spat, "and I will not support it. Victoria will not marry you. I forbid it." Alexander stepped closer. He drew himself up to his full height. His voice dropped to a dangerous level. "You may forbid what you like, Lady Thornbury, but Victoria will be 25 in 6 months. At that time she will not need your permission, and I assure you, I will wait. 6 months, 6 years. However long it takes, I will marry Victoria." Lady Thornbury's face twisted with fury. "You are making a terrible mistake." "No," Alexander said. "The only mistake would be letting Victoria go. Now, if you will excuse me, I have plans to make." He turned and walked out. Behind him, he heard Lady Thornbury shriek with rage. Something shattered. Probably a teacup. Alexander did not care. His hands shook, but his heart was steady. He had stood up for Victoria. He had claimed her publicly. Now he just needed to find her. He searched the house. Victoria was not in the library, not in the drawing room. Finally, he checked the gardens. She was there by the roses. Her face was pale. She turned when she heard his footsteps. "Alexander," she said. "I heard shouting. Was that your stepmother?" Alexander confirmed. "She refused to give permission for our marriage." Victoria's face crumpled. "I knew she would. I am so sorry. You should not have to deal with her cruelty." "Do not apologize," Alexander said. He took her hands. "Listen to me, Victoria. In 6 months, you turn 25. You will not need her permission. We will marry then." "6 months," Victoria whispered. "That is so long. Anything could happen. You might change your mind. You might find someone better." "Impossible," Alexander said. He cupped her face. "There is no one better. You are my choice. My only choice. I will wait forever if I must." "But your mother," Victoria said. "Your family, they will pressure you to marry someone suitable." "You are suitable," Alexander said. "My mother already adores you. She told me so yesterday. She said, you have a kind heart and a clever mind, that you would make an excellent duchess." Victoria's eyes widened. "She said that?" "She did," Alexander confirmed. "My mother is far more perceptive than Lady Thornbury. She sees your worth." Victoria leaned into his touch. Tears streamed down her face. "I am so afraid. Afraid this is all a dream. Afraid I will wake up and you will be gone." "I am not going anywhere," Alexander promised. "I am here. I am real, and I love you." He kissed her softly, tenderly, trying to pour all his love and certainty into that kiss. When they parted, Victoria was smiling through her tears. "I love you too," she said. "So very much." They stayed in the garden for a while, just holding each other, finding comfort and strength in each other's presence. Eventually, they had to go inside. There were still guests, still duties to perform, but everything had changed. They had each other now, and that made all the difference. That evening, Lady Thornbury announced that her family would be leaving immediately. There was an emergency at home, she claimed. Everyone knew it was a lie, but no one said anything. Louisa left with red eyes and a sullen face. She ignored Alexander completely. Victoria came to say goodbye. Lady Thornbury gripped her arm tightly. "You will come with us," she said. "Pack your things." "Actually," Alexander's mother said, stepping forward, "I have invited Miss Victoria to stay on as my personal guest. She has agreed." Lady Thornbury's mouth fell open. "That is highly irregular." "Perhaps," the Duchess Dowager said. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes were steel. "But this is my home, and I wish for Miss Victoria's company. Surely you would not deny a grieving widow some companionship." Lady Thornbury looked between the Duchess and Alexander. She saw the battle was lost. "Fine," she said through gritted teeth. "Keep her. She is more trouble than she is worth anyway." She released Victoria's arm with a little shove. Then she swept out to her carriage. Louisa followed without looking back. Victoria stood in the entrance hall watching them go. Her face was a mixture of relief and sadness. "Come, dear," the Duchess said gently. She took Victoria's hand. "Let me show you to a proper guest room, one befitting my future daughter-in-law." Victoria looked at Alexander. He nodded and smiled. She smiled back. A real smile, full of joy and hope and love. The house party continued for another week. But now everything was different. Victoria no longer hid in corners. She sat with the other guests. She wore some of Anne's dresses, since her own was so shabby. In pretty clothes, with her hair properly styled, Victoria blossomed. She was lovely. Everyone said so. Alexander stayed by her side constantly. He did not care what anyone thought. Victoria was his love, his future. He wanted everyone to know it. At the ball on the final night, Alexander led Victoria onto the floor for the first waltz. She looked beautiful in a pale blue gown. Her hair was arranged with small flowers. Her eyes shone with happiness. "Are you ready?" Alexander asked as they began to dance. "For what?" Victoria asked. "For me to announce our engagement," Alexander said. "I know we cannot marry for 6 months, but I want everyone to know that you are mine." Victoria's breath caught. "Are you certain?" "The gossip." "Let them gossip," Alexander said. "I am proud to call you my betrothed." When the dance ended, Alexander led Victoria to the center of the room. He raised his hand for silence. Everyone stopped and looked at them. "I have an announcement to make," Alexander said. His voice carried through the ballroom. "I am engaged to be married." Excited whispers broke out. Alexander smiled and pulled Victoria closer to his side. "Miss Victoria Thornbury has agreed to be my wife," he continued. "We will marry in 6 months' time, and I could not be happier." There was a moment of shocked silence. Then his mother began to clap. Anne joined her. Slowly, others applauded too. Some looked scandalized, some looked confused, but many smiled. They had seen Alexander and Victoria together all week. They had seen the love between them. It was impossible to deny. Victoria looked up at Alexander with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you," Alexander replied, "for loving me, for saving me, for being exactly who I needed." He kissed her right there in front of everyone. Propriety be damned. She was his, and he would never let her go. The 6 months passed slowly, but they passed. Victoria lived with Alexander's mother and sister. She learned to be a duchess. She studied estate management and social responsibilities, but mostly she just loved Alexander. They spent every day together, walking, talking, reading, falling more deeply in love with each passing moment. Lady Thornbury tried to interfere several times. She wrote letters, she showed up uninvited, she threatened scandal, but Alexander stood firm. His lawyers handled her, his title protected Victoria, and his love gave her strength. Finally, Victoria's 25th birthday arrived. The very next day, they married in Alexander's private chapel. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Victoria wore a simple white gown. She looked radiant. When Alexander saw her walking down the aisle, his throat tightened. This was his wife, his love, his partner, his future. She was everything. They spoke their vows with tears in their eyes. When the vicar pronounced them man and wife, Alexander kissed Victoria with all the love in his heart. She kissed him back with equal passion. They were one now, bound together, forever. The wedding breakfast was full of laughter and joy. Anne gave a tearful speech about how happy she was to have Victoria as a sister. The Duchess Dowager welcomed Victoria officially to the family. Friends toasted the happy couple. It was perfect. That night, Alexander and Victoria retired to the ducal chambers. They stood together in the candlelight. Man and wife, duke and duchess. But most importantly, Alexander and Victoria, two people who had found each other in the darkness, who had healed each other, who had chosen love, despite all obstacles. "Are you happy?" Alexander asked. He held both her hands. "I have never been happier," Victoria said. "You have given me everything: love, safety, a home, a family, yourself. You have given me the same." Alexander said. "You brought me back to life, Victoria. Before you I was just existing, going through the motions. But you made me feel again. You made me hope again. You made me love again." "We saved each other," Victoria said softly. "Yes," Alexander agreed. "We did." He kissed her tenderly. She wrapped her arms around him and held on tight. They had come so far, from loneliness and pain to joy and love. The journey had been hard, but it had been worth it. Every moment had been worth it. Years later, when they had children playing in the gardens and grey in their hair, Alexander would still look at Victoria with wonder. This woman, his wife, his duchess, his everything. She had taught him that love could heal, that broken people could become whole, that darkness could give way to light. And Victoria would look back at him with equal love. This man, her husband, her duke, her hero, he had shown her that she was worthy, that she was beautiful, that she deserved love and happiness and respect. They had found each other when both had lost hope. They had built a life together. From the ashes of their pain, they had created a family, a home, a legacy of love. It was not always easy. Life never is, but they faced everything together, hand in hand, heart to heart. And that made all the difference. In the end, love conquered all, just as it should, just as it always does, and they lived happily ever after, not because life was perfect, but because they chose each other, every day, every moment, for the rest of their lives. The Duke of Ashworth had been a lonely man living in darkness. Victoria Thornbury had been a broken woman living in pain. But together they found light. Together they found healing. Together they found love. And love, as it turns out, was all they needed.